Welcome to Heart Power Conversations. I am delighted to have Rachel of Wolf Woman Rising with me today. And Rachel is going to introduce herself and tell a little bit of her story. But before she does, I wanted to share this quote I found on her website that touched me so deeply. It actually brought me to tears. I'm going to try to read it without crying this time. This is what she said. Wolf Woman Rising is my legacy to the world, and I am so passionate about empowering other women. I'm choosing to align with my deepest soul contract to be at the forefront of women's liberation for self and reclamation of self-authority, authenticity, and purpose. In doing so, I'm living my destiny as teacher and thought leader, and hope to inspire you to trust, believe in, and confidently actualize your destiny also. And yeah, it's making me emotional reading it, because if you've been following me, if you know me, this is so deeply what I believe in, and this is my prayer for all of us. So the fact that I got connected with Rachel through a dear friend, Natalia, who was previously on this podcast, I think is no chance. It's not by chance that it's as everything is very aligned, and I know this conversation is just going to be exceptional. So welcome, Rachel, and I'm so delighted to have you. And I can't wait to hear your story, because your background and your skill set and your passions and all of the things that you have to offer, it's just mind-blowing and incredible and inspiring and all the things. So thank you for being here, and please share a little bit of your story and what it is that is this legacy that you're bringing forward.
Thank you so much, and it's an absolute honor to be here. It really is. And so I'm Rachel, and I am the creatrix of Wolf Woman Rising. So I have many strings to my bow. I'm a best-selling author, women's empowerment coach, also a sacred dance teacher, flower essence practitioner, and I'm based here in North Wales, part of the United Kingdom. So it's up in the north, in the mountains and the forest and the beaches, and that very much, is as a part of me. It's made me who I am, I think, growing up in such a place that's connected to nature, and my lineage is druid lineage. So I go all the way back to the Welsh princes, and before that to the druids as well. And so I live and work here in North Wales, although my school is online. So I teach people internationally, at conferences and events and workshops on my own courses as well. And the reason I'm doing it all, like kind of what drives me and my passion really, is to support women in remembering that, that they're here for a reason, that they aren't a mistake, and that there's nothing wrong with them, because that's how we're brought up, aren't we? We're told that we should change ourselves, we should modify ourselves, we should be lesser than or more than, and all these things, that are telling us how we should be. And yet I think that we all have a purpose. There is a way that we all fit in, that we're all meant to be here, we're all meant to contribute. And if we were all contributing authentically, I think that is truly what would heal the world and heal the feminine, and also heal the masculine as well, if we were actually being authentic and being true to ourselves. And it hasn't been an easy journey for me at all. It's been quite a difficult one, and I've really had to use the ferocity of the wolf to choose my destiny and to actualize it. And all the tools and the lessons and the path I've taken have worked so well and have been kind of my safety jacket. This is why I share them, because I know that they work. I know how effective they are, and they've been gifted to me from nature and, from the divine. So I feel very much it's my role to share that, so other people can also live authentically, but live in a way that they are validating themselves, giving themselves permission to be exactly who they are, because that is enough and that is what is needed.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for putting it so articulately and so beautifully. So when we started recording this interview, I kept saying, instead of saying Wolf Woman Rising, something kept trying to say wild wolf woman, wild woman, wild, and I was laughing, and Rachel said, "Well, you can call me that," and I wasn't quite getting it. And when you were talking about it right now, Rachel, I was hearing it's the wild and free, like that is the spirit, that is the energy that you carry, that is the medicine that, and you can't explain it. You can't give somebody quite the manual. You can give them those tools that have worked for you and that you embody, that you share with people, right? But ultimately it's your frequency that through your words, through the movement that you teach, through whatever it is, that unlocks that in others, in us. And I know so many women listening to this right now they're like wild and free. Okay, how do we bottle that up? And how do we, and I think the wolf is exactly the archetype that is coming right now through you to help us do that. So how did the wolf find you?
Yeah, so it's always, the wolf has always kind of been there. It's intrigued me, like, I suppose one of the first stories that we hear as a child is like Red Riding Hood, or other stories where the wolf is kind of the bad guy. It's the evil one that's in the woods that we're meant to be scared of, that can hurt us. And I think that kind of reflects the way, these stories were created from a very patriarchal kind of society and message, that was trying to keep that wild, untamed, feminine kind of under control, because it didn't understand it, and it has such potential, potentiality, that it can be quite frightening and scary. So when I kind of think, when you say wild, and free, I think of untamed. That's the word that comes forth for me with wolves. So, we think about kind of domesticated dogs, compared to wolves, they are untamed. So they haven't been under social conditioning, or the judgments that we have from society, or the things that we're told we should do, or the ways we should be, or who we should be. The untamed parts of ourselves are who we are before all of that. Who are we in our essential being? So for me, I mean, the wolf really kind of came forward really strongly when I went through this period where I was actually made redundant from my job. And here in the UK, it's something called the National Trust, so it works out in heritage properties. So I've worked in 5 different castles, and I was working with children there and interpreting history and mythology, and it felt like my absolute dream job. And then all of a sudden I was made redundant, and this company got rid of all of the educational departments, stopped teaching children, and stopped learning. And I felt betrayed. Like, how could you, of all things, stop teaching children? And I was in this place where I was like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, I've always been, a coach and a dance teacher and a holistic therapist, but always been part-time. And I realized at that point that I hadn't been given myself permission to kind of like to answer my heart's desire. My heart's desire was, I want to reach wider. Like, I have something important to say, that needs to reach out into the world. But when we start considering, oh, we might be important, we shut that down, don't we? Because we think, perhaps it's arrogant, or it's self-centered, we're scared of being selfish, or being prideful. And the wolf kind of came to me, and was like, you just need to be courageous, and just, you need to choose yourself, and you need to choose your destiny. And the wolf guide that came forward in particular was the goddess Luper, and she's the one I wrote my first book about. So if people are watching the video, this is the goddess Luper. And her story came through to me at this point when I was thinking, who am I, where am I, what do I need to do? And she reminded me that I knew exactly what I needed to do. But her story in ancient Rome mythology is about foundation of Rome. And she, in her story, there's Romulus and Remus, which are 2 babies. They were put in the river to be murdered by their uncle, who had the throne at the time of a different nation. And she found these babies seemingly by, pure coincidence. So I don't believe in coincidence. I believe she was there waiting, and she took them into her cave, into the darkness. And then they were with her there in the cave. And then when they emerged from that darkness, they were then ready to be kings. They became the first kings of Rome and created a settlement. And I felt, gosh, right, this really resonated for me. Like I felt like this dark period where I was lost, where I didn't know what was happening, who I was. I felt like I was in the cave, in the darkness with the she-wolf. And there she was teaching me her lessons, about her ferocious compassion, her ferocious love, her defense of the innocence, and the innocence which I see as our pure self, our untamed self, represented by the children. And then she was kind of like almost like coaching, to so that you're ready to then remember and then actualize your destiny. So that was my first encounter really of actively working with wolf deities. And then from then on, that was it. It was it was woken within me. And I'd always been searching, like I've always wanted to be of service. That's kind of how I've always worded it. I wanted to be of service to humanity and to the divine. And I was never quite sure. And then she helped me to discern, exactly how I was meant to do it. And, here I am now with Wolf Woman Rising. And that was kind of the product of me meeting the wolf and being with her in the wolf cave.
It's an interesting that she Lupa, this wolf queen energy, this mother energy, right? This like wise woman energy, but in a wolf. And I work a lot with ancient Egypt energies. And when you were talking about how the wolf has been deemed dangerous and close your doors and hide the children, all the things. Same with snakes, right? The snakes that are carriers of the divine masculine and feminine wisdom, and through all ancient civilizations, it's really interesting how they are now reemerging in such a big way, not necessarily because we are all reading the same books, but they're coming to us individually, and we are learning directly from them, right? So what would you say to somebody who might be connecting to an energy that is not quite tapped into yet? Like whether it's foxes or owls, bees, whatever it is, when there is not a lot of books about it available, how would you encourage somebody to work with that intelligence, with that consciousness?
So again, I think this thing about permission is important. Like often we kind of think that we need someone else to, to make valid, our experiences or our thoughts. And it's just trusting that what you're experiencing is valid. You don't need someone else's permission to say this is right or this is wrong. Yes, we have teachers and we have coaches and they can facilitate, but in the end, it's our wisdom and our unique connection. It's very personal to us. It's personal to you. So it's that matter of just trust and also not having any pressure, no expectations. Sometimes we have, we think things, healing or learning should look or feel a certain way, and again, we're basing it on the experiences of other people. So often, our teachers and or people around us, we see what they go through. And yes, we can relate to that, but we're all completely unique. So your journey is going to be unique. So just like I said, having no pressure about how it should look, how it should feel, just having some allowance, for your journey and just kind of relaxing into it a bit, not no pressure, not thinking, oh gosh, like, I have to do this or I have to do that. And, and nothing can be wrong really, I don't think either. If it feels good and right for you, that's fine. If you find yourself, I don't know, dancing with a with a wolf spirit, or you feel like you want to draw it, or even, crochet, knitting, or even baking, whatever comes through, that's exactly what is right for you. And there will be other people that will share that experience and will relate, but yours is going to be completely unique. And there are, you can have things facilitated by a teacher, and that's wonderful, but in the end it's always you that's going to experience it. No one, someone can be standing next to you but they can't physically make your arms move. So yeah, just trust yourself, and just keep breathing and relax into it. This life is meant to be joyful. It's meant to be pleasurable. It's meant to be fun. And often we can think about learning things or healing as serious, so we can get too serious. And my experience has been often like, with the divine will encourage me to laugh and smile about things, even when I'm in the darkness. Like one of the funniest things that ever happened to me was, I remember I was when I first started engaging, with wolf spirit. I remember lying in bed, and it was a really like hot night, and I stuck my leg outside of the quilt covers, and I remember my wolf guides were like laughing and just saying, "Oh, that looks like a really yummy lamb chop," and it was a joke, and I remember feeling like, "Gosh, they're really funny," and for some reason I hadn't expected it, that there to be laughter in that relationship, because I thought, right, this is serious. I need to do this. I need to do that. This is all about, my awakening. You can get really, it can be very big and dramatic, can't it? But actually it can be the simple things, and it can be gentle, and it doesn't have to be big and epic. We're kind of looking, we're imagining our healing journey to be like some kind of like game show sometimes, aren't we? And actually often it's the simple things, the quiet things, the little moments, that nobody else even needs to know about.
Yeah, no one needs to know about. I think that's a it's like highlight and exclamation mark, because so much of our lives these days is about sharing and oversharing and
Yeah.
sharing all the magical things that happen because it provides validation or something, right?
Yeah.
And when you were talking about your advice and your own experiences, I kept I kept thinking that how important it is for somebody to know that sometimes these guides come, for example, swan or bees or hummingbirds, they come for us. They don't come for us to build a mystery school out of it or to write a
Hmm.
book about it or whatever it is. That
Yeah.
sometimes it's just for us
Hmm.
to trust ourselves, like you were saying, that so that we don't run and Google what does this spirit guide means. It's for
Hmm.
us to learn to trust ourselves and to develop our skills before the next thing is
Hmm.
revealed in its due time, right? In divine timing.
Yeah.
Because so many of
Hmm.
us are seeking through this awakening journey. Well, how will I use this? How will this become part of my medicine or my whatever? And
Hmm.
sometimes these animal guides come because it's part of the medicine that you need, that ultimately will become the
Hmm.
become something. But in this moment, can you just be curious and let yourself explore? So your part of your business is the Under the Dancing Tree School of Sacred Dance and Healing. And dance has been coming up for me a lot lately. For me and everyone who keeps coming to me too. Can you speak to one, the origins of your connection to dance, and two, what is the role of dance in the divine feminine collective energy awakening, shaking that consciousness and releasing it and freeing it, whatever we want to call it.
Yeah, of course. Oh, lots of yummy stuff. I could be going for hours in this one. So just frame me in if I go off on a tangent. Yeah, so I mean, for me, like my two pathways have always been history and dance, and they both came very early in my life. So the very first experience I had of dancing was when I was 14. And at that age, I was quite badly bullied as a teenager because I came into puberty very young. So I started my periods just the day before my ninth birthday. So I was developed very young, and I was becoming a woman very young. And obviously, I was doing this alone because my peers hadn't got to that stage yet. So at 14, I was kind of like, you get peer pressure, and thank goodness it was before Instagram and Facebook, because I hate to think what teenagers are going through now, because the comparison of, am I right, am I wrong? And I remember thinking about like how how do I be a woman now? Like, what does it mean to be in my body? You know, because it's changing, it's developing. How is this body mine? You know, and I remember being faced with society was very much into rejecting the female body if it didn't look or sound or do a certain way. And I remember thinking, well, my body isn't wrong, but I needed some way of kind of proving that, if that makes sense, to myself. And I just happened to come upon a belly dance workshop, and I remember doing the moves, and it was just like there should have been like epic music and lights going on, because it was just this moment where something felt just so very right. Like everything in me just lit up, and I knew that it was like probably one of the most important moments of my life. And I was just dancing the moves, they all came naturally to me, which is a gift. But then also I remember watching the belly dancer on the stage, and I remember being fascinated by the fact that she was enjoying her body so much. She was just loving dancing, and it wasn't about anybody else. She wasn't performing to anybody else, because I very much at that point I'd been told that my female body was for the masculine. That was the point. It was to be used or seen by men. So the fact that she was doing this for herself, enjoying her body, she didn't think it was wrong. She was just like playing with the music in herself. I was so inspired at that point that I decided I just had to do it. So I went and found my first belly dance class, and then after a few months, my teacher she had to stop for health reasons. And I remember thinking, at this point, I think I was 15, and I remember thinking I have to do this. So I just decided that this is what I was meant to do. And I went off and did my teacher training when I was 15. And bless her, my mum, has always been a support in this. And she drove me, around the country. And I even went abroad, to do my training. And I started teaching after school. I started teaching belly dancing at 16. And I was really intrigued, that the women that were coming to me were often in their 40s and their 50s, and they were, again, looking for that same kind of validation of their bodies. They'd had babies, they'd had, a relationship, etc. And they'd finally come to this point where they're like, well, who am I? And what am I doing? Why am I here? And belly dancing was actually their way of reconnecting with their body. They weren't always doing it that consciously, but that is what was happening anyway. I remember, like, I think I was about 17, 18. I remember thinking, gosh, okay, I wonder if, women were coming to a technique class and gaining confidence, learning about their bodies. Now, what if we actually did that on purpose? What if we had the intention of dancing for healing? And so I found at that point I'd connected with one of my teachers. I've been lucky enough to find her and began learning from her. And eventually I was doing dance meditation on my own anyway, but into my 20s, she kind of guided me to learn about inner dance and awakened belly dance, which is using belly dancing, to connect with the chakras, our energy points, and using movement to, move stagnant energy or to build energy, as a release, because often, meditation is very masculine, because it's structured, it is still, it's not flowing like the feminine. Often, dance can be something that the feminine connects to very much so. The dance styles I particularly teach are Hawaiian hula, Polynesian dance, and belly dancing. They're the two, the Egyptian dance, and both are very, very ancient. Both are connected to ritual, connected to worshipping the divine, that connection, and, connected to nature as well. So often the moves we're using are reflecting nature, like even belly dancing. So we're using the figure of 8, that universal DNA, the helix, that's in all of nature. In the Hawaiian hula, you're using your arms like the waves, you're swaying like the grass and the trees, so you're a part of nature. Again, you're realizing your body is a part of nature. You're moving it in a way that is wild and free and untamed, because it's not fixed. It's not a performance for someone else. You're not doing it like, oh, I'm, doing it as a fitness class. I'm going to burn 300 calories, or I'm going to do it for so-and-so and do it for this. You're just purely just being there with your body and allowing it to move in ways that are truly natural to it. And that can be really liberating, just doing that. And then, like I said, when you do it with intention, you can use these moves, to to move energy on purpose. Like if you're moving your hips, you can move any energy that's stuck or that needs to be drawn up to, in the womb, for example, the sacral chakra, or, something, say, like, with the heart, if your heart's heavy and you're grieving and you can feel that grief upon your shoulders, just shaking it off, just something as simple as that can help that to move, physically and spiritually and energetically. And these two things are connected, the physical body and the energy, the spiritual body. They're not, we often think of them as separate things, don't we? Like, often, we've been taught in some kind of practices to detach from the body, detach from the mind. So we're trying to escape from. And I actually think that what we truly need is a returning to. Women have had too much detachment from their bodies already. Where the healing is returning to home, the home that first and foremost that is our bodies. And when we come back to it and truly listen to it, we can find out what it needs, what it wants, what it's telling us. It has messages. And if we can't hear that, if we're too much in the mind or too much in the busy or too much in the doing, we have to just come back and just be with our bodies. And dance and movement can be a really powerful way of doing that.
Oh, I could listen to you talk about this for hours. You could talk about it for hours and I could listen to you for hours. When you were talking about the figure eight with the hips, that's a message I've been a dance modality or something, a teacher teaching that has been something that I've been hearing and seeing nonstop, really since Egypt trip 888 Lionsgate. I've been doing that with my hips. And my friend Iris, if you're listening to this, we've had this conversation where we were calling in the dance teacher that holds those codes of something, because nothing has really resonated. And I grew up being a dancer, and my favorite style was always African dance, the stomping and the shaking and the the drum, the beat of the drum was just djembe, was everything. And also ballroom and all kinds. But now what's been calling me is more of this fluid, and I couldn't find a word for it. And when you were talking about it, I was like, that's it. That's it. It's Rachel's modality. I don't know what it is, but that's it. So do you teach, is it only in person, retreats, in online? How do you teach? Where can we learn from you?
Yeah, so I mean, dancing at the moment is purely in person. I mean, I do teach, like this weekend, I'm teaching at an online conference where I'm teaching the Dance of Ceres, which is dance healing with the goddess of the harvest in Roman mythology. So I do occasionally offer, dancing online. The only thing I do find with dancing online, I'm not there with you. And I feel like a really important element of dancing is dancing in community, and also, technique wise, it can be very difficult to physically see what someone's doing. And I wouldn't want, anybody to hurt themselves. So I do teach dancing as part of my courses, and part of my workshops. There's always a dance aspect because that's part of me. And I do think that people resonate with different things, don't they? Some needing dance and some need guided meditation. So I always do both depending on what you're most needing. So yeah, so you can catch me online dancing and in person. So around the UK, and you'll find workshops with me. And then if you're purely online, then yeah, you'll get that in my courses for definite. And then occasionally I pop up in festivals and conferences. But yeah, I don't do like weekly classes anymore online. I did over COVID, but like I said, I was struggling. Like, for me, it's really important that I think as a teacher and a facilitator that your students, they feel safe. And and it's difficult, I said, to physically see what someone's doing, and I wouldn't want someone to kind of have their, because especially with belly dancing and Polynesian dancing, if your knee or your back is out of place, it can cause damage, so seek out. I mean, what I would do, if, like, say you're thinking, oh, this sounds absolutely amazing, and you want to try it yourself but you can't access me or another teacher, I would say go and find the teachers that teach the technique, like the belly dancing or the Hawaiian dancing, whatever it resonates, the African dancing, etc., and then bring it into your own practice. So bring it into your own meditation. So there you've got the movements, so you know technique wise what is safe and how to do it. And then, like, I say to all of my students, go home, put on your favorite music. So in class you'll learn about the authentic music, but go home and, like, for me it's heavy metal. That's the one that really gets my juices flowing. Whether I want to feel sexy or whether I want to get, like, anger, frustration out. And go home, put on your own music, create sacred space, put on the candles. You don't even have to do the dance class beforehand. Just do this. Just create a space, have a time, have a place, put on candles, put on your favorite clothes, something that makes you feel really, really good. You feel comfy in, and just put on your favorite music, and then just begin to move in, and don't think about it. Like, I think one of the most, like, barriers to dancing is the brain, like, is thinking. you know it's the not thinking that is dancing. I said, because you're in the body. And if you start thinking, I'll do four of that and then four of that, I don't think you're dancing. You're kind of performing, which is different. So just go put on your favorite music, have a date night with yourself. And there's no plan, there's no intention at all. You just move and just see what happens. And I've got playlists on my Spotify that people can use, if you want dancing. Or, you know what, if anybody's watching this, then they can just message me and I'll send them stuff. Send them stuff.
Was
They can have some
actually
music and
going to ask
playlists and
you if
etc.
we could link something like your favorite, if there is some of your favorite songs, and if there is any video out there of you on YouTube dancing, so that, because sometimes it's like, well, I'm having a hard time visualizing this, but like seeing somebody do it so freely, it can be, and I think with dance, the key is always to find the right teacher, the right energy that you connect with. And I
Yeah,
agree with you that the in-person is crucial when you're learning, because especially in something like this, it's the energy of the group, the energy of the collective coming together of these women
yeah,
that encourage and empower and allow all of those barriers to be dropped, all of the the self-consciousness. And because once you see somebody else be so free and not encouraging you to do it, in
yeah,
that circle environment that we create as facilitators, that's when a lot of us can let go. And yeah, but I love
yeah.
what you described, that date with yourself and finding
Mhm.
the music. But I think if there is something that you could share, it would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I've got a movement meditation. It's like an hour and a half workshop. So if anybody wants that, then I'll send that.
Sounds
It's all
good.
yours, and enjoy.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I wanted to ask you about your other book, because you
hmm
mentioned that you wrote two books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. Well, I've got two that are out at the moment, and then there's one. There's two that are in production, so they'll be out next year. But yeah, so I've got, obviously you've already mentioned Luper already, so I've always got them with me. They're like my babies, honestly. Like, I was out, like, where was I the other day? I was like out shopping or something, and someone mentioned, "Oh yeah, your book's out." I was like, "Oh yeah, here it is." I literally had it in my handbag. Like, I walk around with them like they're my kids. I love them
Do
very
you
much.
sign them and
Um,
give them to people when it's like,
Yeah, I always, honestly, I always have a supply that I've already signed in my car, that, because, like, you never know when you're gonna have a conversation about it. I talk about walls a lot, so it always comes up. But yeah, so the first book is specifically about Luper, the goddess, and the healing and the energy and the lessons that she has. And then the second one, Wolf, is broader, so it's about, well, I mean, the title is Untamed, Courageous, Empowered, an inspirational guide to embodying your inner wolf. So it's a big book and it's got a lot in there, like all of my tips and tools about how to connect with the energy of the wolf. So I've got kind of real life situations. You can read about how my students have worked with this energy, then the archetypes of wolf, real wolves and how they work in the pack, their wisdom and how they can teach us about, the wonderfulness of being different and our uniqueness and how we contribute. I talk about wolf mythology, the lessons of the past, and kind of how wolf mythology was used by ancient people. And then I come forward into wolf deities and wolf gods and goddesses, specific gods and goddesses that can help you with specific things. So whenever you connect with an energy, we were talking about animals before, every time you connect with one, there's going to be a unique lesson for you. So, I mean, there's like 30 gods and goddesses in there. They're all connected to wolf, but every single one has a different lesson and a different way to connect with wolf. So you're going to have one that you particularly resonate with. That's going to be your reason for finding or being inspired by wolf. And then I have a story that is a retelling of the myth of Fenrir. Fenrir is the great wolf of Norse mythology. And his story, I believe, is very much about reclaiming the parts of us that had been made wrong and bad and ugly. He's called kind of like nemesis of Odin. He was made to be the bad guy and the evil one because he was the bringer of the apocalypse. And so my story is about, well, what if he wasn't so wrong? Actually, it's kind of from his point of view, which I think is the way we always need to look at things. Things are never black and white. They're always, 1,000 shades of grey. It's never as simple as just what's right and what's wrong. I kind of very much like in ancient Greek mythology, they had the words ripe and unripe instead. So it wasn't bad and good. It was ripe and unripe, as in those things that you would normally call wrong are just not ripe yet. They're not ready, or they're not developed, or they're just, they're still in process. And then I give loads of tips and tools all about how to connect to wolf energy and wolf spirit and how to embody wolf in your day-to-day life. There's lots of practical things in there as well. Yeah. So
When you
my
were
babies.
talking about it, I was seeing like an oracle deck with these deities and the different lessons and the wolf energy. Maybe someday.
Yeah, that's one of my dreams. I haven't worked out how to do it yet, but I have,
Well,
yeah.
I am adding to your dream and I'm magnifying it with you. And
Thanks.
for anyone listening, please join in magnifying the intention in this dream, and the how will reveal itself. It's not up to us a lot of the time, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
very true.
yeah.
Mm.
Okay. So one of the tips maybe you could share with us from
Mhm.
this, if there is an archetype that right now feels like the time is right, whether it's for you or for your clients, you've been seeing a pattern. Who is the archetype that wants to come out to work with us right now that you feel might be the right one to introduce to the listeners?
So the one that came through straight away was Father Wolf. And this has really intrigued me over the last few years that, there's so much connection to goddess, isn't there, and to feminine energy. But actually, the one that's been coming through most powerfully is Father Wolf. The archetype of father. And I believe that we have the potentiality for all archetypes within ourselves, so we need to embody them all at different times of our life or in different situations. So they're not gender specific. It's not like all men can embody the father and only men. We can also embody the father wolf. And the father wolf, in the wolf pack, they don't have like an alpha male, like I see it all the time. Like there's a gym near me where it's just like male bodybuilders and it's called like alpha wolf. And it always annoys me because I'm like, where has this idea come from? Because in the wolf pack, it doesn't work like that. There's a mum and a dad, and they are the the alphas of the pack because of the parents. Their pack are their children, and they work together. And in fact, if anybody's in charge, it's the alpha female, because she's the one that kind of has the decisions, and then the male wolf will kind of like, oh, okay, I'll put that into practice for you. And when she's in the den and she's breeding, he'll be in charge of the pack, and they'll go and bring food back for her. But the energy and archetype of father wolf is really about protection, about boundaries, but in a really healthy way. And I think that it's really needed because, there's so many examples of male leadership and power in the world that are, I don't want to use the word corrupt, maybe they're unripe. Let's put it, they're unripe, and I think a lot of us kind of lack that example of a father that is protective, but protective, from heart led rather than, from again, ways that are unripe, I suppose. And I mean, this is something that I experienced myself. So my dad was very overpowering and very fixed and self-centered in his ways. And I remember feeling like a tiny little acorn, under this giant oak that I just couldn't breathe because I couldn't grow because he was so much bigger than me. Yet the father, within ourselves is the one that's going to be creating healthy boundaries. The wolves will often go around and they'll scent mark boundaries. They'll see where they need to be, how they need to be, and he'll be doing that, and he'll be providing for. So I think, for us women, like a big theme that comes up for us a lot is self-care and self-nourishment. And we think about coming into the feminine for that, but actually we need that father wolf energy, that masculine, to support that. So the father wolf would be, say, the one who, makes sure that we have a sacred space, that we have sacred time. He'll schedule it in. He'll make sure that the kids are somewhere else being noisy, not around. He'll ask, he'll be very clear. He'll communicate, from within yourself, with your partner, like, I need this time that's just mine. He'll create the space. So within that space, the feminine then can then flow in her dance. I mean, the guy that comes forward for me most of all with this is the god Mars. And I'm currently writing a book about him because I'm just so passionate about him. And what's interesting is, as the patriarchy over the last 1,000 years has engaged with him, he's become the god of war. Yeah, originally he was a god of fertility and health and healing. And I just find this progress of him really interesting in that, he is the farmer, yet he is the god of war. He's about this balance, that there is a time when we need passion and the fire of the warrior, when we need that, the one way to work with the masculine and Mars is, when it comes to things like anger, and we've made things like anger wrong, and bad, and it can be used in ways that are really destructive, but also it can be really helpful as well. Like I remember on my healing journey, somebody asking me once, one of my teachers saying, what are you angry about? And I was like, well, I'm not angry about anything. I don't have any anger. And literally there was nothing. I was completely numb because I'd made anger wrong and bad because I was a good girl. And of course I never did that. I was not allowed to shout and not allowed to speak out. I had to keep it all in. And I kept it in so much, it was numb. And I started realizing that actually, no, like, my anger tells me what I'm passionate about. Like, what makes you really, really angry? And like, say you're watching the telly and you're seeing like there's atrocious things going on, getting angry about that is fuel to make a difference. We can use that fire to fuel our passions so that we can be of service. It gives us our why, and Father Wolf is, and the father archetype is helping us to engage with that fire within ourselves and to use it to be of service, to give it a sacred purpose. So it's not just raging anger or frustration. It's not the fire that's flaming about, but the fire has been used to, light a candle or light the hearth at the center of the home. So I personally think that's what's needed most at the moment. I think some of this coming too much in the feminine has left the masculine behind. And the wolf pack shows us with this alpha, female and male are both working together in leadership. It's not just about the feminine rising. She's not rising on her own. She needs to rise with the masculine. I know we need to bring the both up together at the same time because they support each other. It's about communion and collaboration. And I think that sometimes, we think we need to heal the feminine when actually it's the masculine that's needing the healing, because that's being the one that's been the abuser, or the one that's, been shunned within ourselves as women.
Thank you. Thank you for that. When you were talking about the Father Wolf, I kept seeing the King of Pentacles card in tarot, like that figure, that solid, strong, wise, the one that's looking at the cubs doing dumb stuff kind of with a gentle smile, and they'll know, they'll figure it out. That doesn't go, you need to do this and micromanage, and out of fear and control and unhealed wounds of his own. But he is magnanimous. That's the word that comes to mind. And thank you for bringing up Mars in that way, because I think so often we think of Mars same way as Mercury in astrology.
Yeah.
We fear it, we blame it for things, and I can only make the comparison of Sekhmet, where she also has been vilified, and she is drunk with blood, and she is all of this fighter energy, but she was a healer, a really powerful healer. And I think she holds that same courage of the heart quality, and somebody who teaches us how to channel that anger, that rage into action instead of, and it's interesting because she's very fiery and so is Mars, right? That energy they're almost like the two sides of the same coin with very similar consciousness. Again, the yin yang, the divine masculine and divine feminine, which is something, and I don't know how familiar you are with this aspect of my work and what I share about it, but from my time in Egypt, one of the big things that was revealed to me there by the queens and kings of the ancient time was that we're at a time when the divine masculine is standing at the door, wanting to come in, wanting to enter the collective consciousness, into these men that are awakening, that are ready to hold it, ready to embody it. But it's almost like they don't feel safe because the women are pointing fingers in some way and saying, you have to change so that I can feel safe, so that I can be in my feminine power. And I'm in my feminine power, but you're not. And there's this uncomfortable dance and finger pointing that's happening. So one of the teachings that was given to me is that it's part of our journey to bring it to balance within ourselves, but also to live with such deep compassion for what the masculine is going through now and will be going through, right? Because the journey really is just beginning for a lot of this. Like we have the next 20, 30 years to really birth this new consciousness and this union. So yeah, I wonder if you have any advice for any wisdom to share around how to be. I feel like that's what we struggle with, right? That presence. Like, what is the presence that I need to embody and hold if the wolf has any maybe it's another archetype, right? Or maybe it's a wisdom that has come through you and your personal journey that can help with this, because I see this almost every day with every client.
I think, like, with my wisdom school, the three pillars that I live and teach by, like the three things that I think I feel are most important, are courage, trust, and authenticity. So all that I teach comes back to those three things. Like for me, they've been my three biggest things. That's therefore what I know, so that's therefore what I teach. And I think it all for me, I can see it all coming back to those three things. So let's go say authenticity first. So authenticity is important because, like I said, we all have a purpose on this planet. And imagine, like, use the body as an example, and we're all different parts of the body. All those different parts of the body contribute something different, don't they? And every single one of them is needed. Now imagine if a body was just all hands. I mean, it wouldn't be able to think. There'd be nothing to, it couldn't walk, it couldn't smell. So you need all those different body parts. And so we have to kind of come into our own authenticity and return to it. And it can be really difficult, especially, like, you've been through, like me, and you've been through any time where you felt like you've been bullied, you've been made to be wrong, or your difference has caused you to be seemingly vulnerable, that you felt that you've been persecuted because of that difference. But it is our difference that truly is needed, like again, examples of nature, every single flower, they all have their own each medicinal property. If they all cured the same thing, but it wouldn't be helpful to us as humans, if they all just did one thing. They all have their own different things. So to get into touch of your own authenticity, a way to do that is to come back to your childhood and to look at what really excited you, what lit you up, when you were a child. So when you had your playtime, what were you inclined to do? What was it at that point that you'll see threads, throughout, kind of, if you reflect back on your life, that it always kind of cropped up, it was always something that you kind of went back to. So I remember as a small child, like, I used to be in the garden with nature more because I felt connected more to the trees than I did to human beings, because human beings didn't make sense to me. But I remember making, like, hotels and homes, for these beings that I I didn't, well, and now I know that they're kind of elementals or something, but at the time I had no concept. They were just my friends, and that is an indicator to me that what is interesting to me as part of my purpose is the creation of space, facilitating other people, being a teacher that links into that. So you might have something similar, in your childhood, and when we become older, we kind of, we come into what we should be doing, maybe what our parents did, we end up following their path, because we inherit the expectations or a business, or, we end up going down a certain path. Like, as women, we're told we should have kids, we're told we should get married, etc. But as a child, what really lit you up? Like, when you say, you asked your 6-year-old self, what do you want to do as a job when you're older? And kids always come out with something like really crazy, won't they? Like, I want to go to the moon, and, and as an adult, we go, oh, well, that's not really practical. Do you want to be an accountant? You know what? Actually, that child has a dream there about connecting to the moon. And it might not mean they become an astronaut. It might mean something else, that they end up becoming a menstrual coach, or, they end up having a brand of, like, new magic implements or something. It could lead anyway. They could become astronomer, etc. But they'll be, before you were told what you should be, who were you, or who are you, but before you were kind of started to compare yourself to other people. And then when we come into trust, it's about trusting that purpose, trusting that authenticity, that is what you're meant to have. And trust is something that just comes with practice. Like, you don't suddenly just trust. You just have to keep on doing it again and again and again, and just keep saying, I trust, I trust. And it can be really difficult, because I think then when we trust ourselves, we are taking self-responsibility, and a lot of us don't want to do that. We don't want to be responsible for ourselves. We want our mum, or we want, someone else to pick up the pieces and to tell us what to do. So it can be hard, but that's where the courage comes in. That courage is doing things. I think it was one of the Roosevelt's account, my favorite quote, which was, fear is not the absence of courage, but it's the belief that something's more important than that fear. Did I just say that right? Yeah. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the belief that something is more important than that fear. So, like, I still don't consider myself to be a very confident person, but I'm definitely courageous because I do it anyway. I think, oh gosh, this could be really scary, but I do it anyway, because what if I didn't, like that fear is just an emotion, it's a feeling, and it will pass. And I think that, how long will you wait, for permission? How long will you wait to be ready? Are you going to wait till you're 70? Are you going to, often we're waiting for a partner to do something, aren't we? Whether it's like, travel, or we're waiting for our parents' permission to go and get that dream job, but how long are you going to wait? I think in the end, sometimes we just have to just jump in the deep end. But then having that trust, trusting yourself when it is right to do things as well. So sometimes it isn't right to jump in the deep end yet. You just start in the shallow end, but that's when that trust comes in. You've got to listen to your body, and you can build all these things by just keep coming back to it. I say to my students, practice makes progress. You have to just keep on doing things until it becomes a habit. It's not like things just magically happen, like, it'll just suddenly, like, it's a download like that. Again, we're waiting for this big moment, this big game show moment where the lights and the music's happening. But actually, it's those simple small steps, the everyday steps, the everyday things, trusting yourself, like, bodies, says don't go down that road. The more you listen to that, the more you'll begin to trust yourself. And it's just, those little moments where you keep on doing it, keep it simple. It's not, doesn't have to be big and showy. It's not about all the lights. It's often about those simple moments just with you and in yourself. I don't know if that made any sense. I feel like I went off on a
That
little bit of a
made
tangent then.
so much sense. And in a way, it's your version of heart-powered living, because that to me is exactly what it means as well. It's a different approach and a different methodology, if you will, but ultimately it accomplishes exactly the same thing, and it guides us to live powered by our self, our authentic self, that is courageous, that is trusting, that is here in service of something. And when a woman can step into this way of being, it's a different frequency, right? It's a frequency of a wise, untamed, untamed wolf woman, ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Mm.
Rachel, we could talk for hours. We could really talk for hours. Um, so if somebody is listening to you right now and saying, gosh, she resonates so much, I just love everything, every bit of wisdom she had to share, how can they find you? How can they work with you? Where can they find your books?
Yeah, so I'm primarily on Facebook and Instagram. So if you look at Wolf Woman Rising, or even just if
I'll
you want to
link
keep it
everything
simple,
in the
find my
show notes.
website, wolfwomanrising.com. Great, thank you. Then there's Facebook, Instagram. If you're after like meditations you want to experience, I have lots of free stuff like that on my website. And then on YouTube, I have meditations, and I have a Goddess Wisdom series, which is all about, different goddesses and gods that you can connect to. And my book's all on my website. So probably the website is the place to go. And then you can find all the different threads to all the other places from there. Yeah. And I'd
And
love
how
to
do you
connect. That'd be
work
really
with people?
beautiful.
I know you mentioned conferences and
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
the other things.
So I would say a good starting point is my books. And then I also offer one-to-one coaching where I use flower essences and meditations to do that. And then, yeah, I've got online courses. There's no more this year now because we're going into winter, but I have 9-month courses, 6-month courses, 3-month courses, all on my website. Try my meditations first that are free to see if I resonate and my style resonates. And then, yeah, I'm always in conferences all over all over the place. So that's always a good way to get, yeah, a little sample as well.
Okay, so sounds good. And lastly, I wanted to ask you one more thing. There are many sisters that are interested in writing books, whether it's about their
Mm.
story of awakening, about their their gifts, about channeled wisdom that is coming through them. Is there
Mhm.
an advice you could give somebody who is contemplating writing a book? Considering
Mm,
you've published 2 and there are 2 more in the works.
production, yeah. So, I think I'd always enjoyed writing, but when it came to writing a book, I couldn't do it until I gave myself permission. Um, and often we have this kind of, what do you call it, imposter syndrome, where we think, well, who am I to share anything? Like, who am I to say? But just remember what I said about every single flower being unique and every single flower offering its own healing remedy. So your words are going to land with someone. They're going to resonate with someone in a way that other people's aren't, even if it's on the same theme or, the same subject. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of books on meditation, but probably in some point in your life you found one that really spoke to you. It doesn't mean that the other thousands aren't good. It just, that's the one that landed with you. So just, give yourself permission. And also, like, what's happened with me and my process, like, I found that really creating sacred space structure, using the masculine to support the feminine. So, I've always felt that, well, two things: that writing, it's all about you because you're that unique flower that has a unique healing remedy. However, it's also nothing about you because you are a channel for that wisdom to come through you. It's not yours. It doesn't belong to you. It's not like, this is mine and I'm the one that created it. No, you are a channel for that wisdom. And it's from your higher self, it's from the universe, it's from nature. And it's a gift that you've been given to channel that through. Therefore, you need to show your appreciation for that gift by, firstly, by doing it, but also trusting what is coming through you, and use the masculine to create space and time, whether that's journaling or whether that's going to somewhere to write on purpose, to allow that to come through. And I used tools like the dancing and the flowers and nature to give myself a space to allow it to come through. And I've had a few students who I have coached through the book writing process, and I've provided them, my, well, it was expertise. I won't call myself an expert, but certainly guidance, in doing that. So if that resonates with anybody, they want me to support them and coach them in that way, then I can do that as well. Because it's a process that is easy and hard. It's that paradox in that if you're meant to do it, it will be so easy. But it can be hard because of the challenges that we set up for ourselves, like this imposter syndrome or the high standards, or applying ourselves. So yeah, if you need support and more support in that, just let me know. And there are particular goddesses and gods that can also help with writing, like Sheshet, in Egyptian, or Minerva, Apollo, any of those kind of guides. Call on them to help you as well.
Ah, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Rachel. Thank you for coming on, for being here. Thank you for sharing all of this wisdom, all of this no gatekeeping. Thank you for sharing. I'm sure our listeners are going to resonate so much with everything everything that has been shared and will want more. So thank you again for being here. And dear
Thank you so much
listeners,
for having me.
and dear listeners, thank you for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, review, and until next time, thank you.